Roadmaps are an essential tool for every product leader. They're what connects the work that you're doing every day to the goals. Roadmaps are essentially the best tool that you have to communicate your overall strategy and how the work of every team member is contributing to that work. In this video, we're going to talk about tools you can use to build a roadmap, what you need to include in your roadmap, and how to integrate a roadmap into your processes within your newsroom. In many ways, the editorial calendar is already like a roadmap. It assigns what work is coming, schedules it, and kind of predicts when that's going to land. It's the best look into what the overall strategy is for your newsroom at any given point in time. Now, imagine if instead of just scheduling our stories, reporters set goals. You knew who are the audience you're targeting, what are the long-term things that you're trying to cover on your beat in order to have the most impact. And how can we slate out over time what work needs to be done and what stories need to be written so that we can think of the larger picture of what's going to happen with that beat. Building an editorial calendar that connects that work, those goals, to the day-to-day is more like a product roadmap. So let's talk about what a product roadmap or any kind of roadmap really needs to be the most effective. You can build a roadmap for a single product, like a website or a newsletter, or you can build a roadmap to coordinate multiple products, multiple projects at once, and prioritize them. It really doesn't matter what tool you use. You can use Basecamp, Jira, Google Docs, Asana, whatever project management software your company is using, you can use to build a roadmap. There are 4 things that every roadmap should have. 1, it should connect back the work that you're doing to your goals. 2, it should prioritize that work. Say what is the most important and what's the least important right now. 3, it should designate responsibility. Who's driving this work? Who's helping or consulting on it? And who's the final approver that can say this is done? And 4, your roadmap should communicate deadlines and a timeline for when the work will be completed. Let's walk through a simple example of a roadmap on Google Docs and talk through what kinds of things a good roadmap should contain. This example is broken up by quarter. Here you can see we could write out our high-level objective and the key results that we're trying to achieve. Then we'll connect the actual work that we're doing to those key results in that objective. So you might say, this is a list of the high priority projects or features that we're trying to build or stories that we're assigning or storylines that we're pursuing. A description of what that work entails. Who's the driver? Who's the person responsible for moving this forward? And who's the approver? Who's the person who's going to say, yes, this is done, yes, this is good work, it's ready to ship, or it's ready to go. Next, you might have consultants, people who are helping. We usually don't do work alone, but you still want to have one person who's primarily responsible for making sure things are keeping and moving forward. Finally, you would have who's informed. These are people who need to know what's happening. It could be if you're working on a CMS feature, the rest of the newsroom. It could be other editors on your team. Just who needs to know what progress is being made. And finally, a deadline. When are you going to get all of this done? You can see I've split this up into high priority and low priority. They're essentially the same fields for every section. Now, if you're doing this work really far in advance, you might have a good idea of what's going to happen in the next 3 months, in the next quarter, or in the 3 months after that. Your objective may stay the same. It might change. You might just use this as a way to provide a status update. How close are you on achieving the key results that you're looking for? Do you need to change the key results because you've learned new things or you've achieved some and not others and you know that things need to be changed? This is just a small example of the way that you could build your roadmap. All right, let's take a peek at the roadmap that I use at Chalkbeat to coordinate all of our work. I use a tool called Airtable, which is essentially a really fancy spreadsheet. What I like about Airtable is it allows you to change the view and see your roadmap in different forms depending on what you're trying to do. I also really like Airtable because you can connect records between spreadsheets and kind of bring it all together. So in this example, what you'll see is I have a sheet called Goals, and this is connecting the highest level goals of my team, which are audience, revenue, and scale, to the OKRs we've written, the high-level objectives, and the key results that we're trying to achieve. And finally, it connects all of those down to the project level. What is the actual work that we're doing day to day that we think is going to achieve the key results that we've set and allow us to achieve the objective? So in this view, you can see all of that together. And then let's take a look at this roadmap tab. This is a list of all of the projects. What you can see is for each project, it's connected back to the goals and the objectives. I've set what the status is, if we're actively working on it, whether we're blocked, which means that something else is maybe stopping us from doing work in this area, whether it's something we need to prioritize, or if it's on the back burner or a backlog. I also set the priority. Is it high, average, low? You can also use 1, 2, or 3 to set your priorities. It doesn't really matter, so long as you're designating what really is of utmost importance compared to what's of lower priority. Next, I show where things are in the schedule. You can do this by quarter, you can do it by month, you can do it by sprint if you have a 2-week sprint cycle that your team uses, however it is that you want to schedule things out. But this way you can see kind of long-term what the time frame is. Finally, if I have a pitch document, a strategy document, a memo about what we're working on, I include the link to that here. And if I don't, I might leave myself a note that we need more strategy here, especially for things that are planned for further out in the future. Next, I have a responsibility matrix, which is to say, I say who's accountable and responsible for each of these things. So in one column, there's the driver. The driver is the person who is literally driving things forward. They're the person most responsible for making sure things happen. But the driver isn't necessarily the only one working on it. You might also have helpers and consultants who are contributing work to the project. And you also have an approver. The best way to assign the approver is to have one person who is ultimately responsible for saying, yes, this is done, or yes, you can move forward. If you have too many approvers, things can get a little bit difficult. And then I also include the level of effort. Is it something that's a small task or a big task? This might change over time. Similarly, the driver might change over time. Someone might be driving a project initially and then it changes. So this is an example of how my roadmap is organized. One thing I like about Airtable is you can set it up to have these different views. So you might have a calendar view. Where you can say, all right, what date field do I want to use for scheduling? Or you might have a Kanban view, which if you've ever used the tool Trello, that's what a Kanban is. It basically puts things in buckets so you can see them over time. So one of the ways that I use this view is I say, okay, we're in Q3 right now and there are 24 active projects. That's a lot. And I only have 6 scheduled for Q4. So it's likely that we're not going to get all of this stuff done, right? So how can I anticipate what we're not going to finish and move that into Q4 and set higher priorities for my team on what they need to do first? I also use this in our sprint planning process, which is we do this every 2 weeks. And for anything that is active, we go through the list and I check in with the driver and they provide an update for everyone on the team. So what's the last thing that happened and what are we going to do next? And finally, we have our tasks. Tasks are things that are actually connected back to the projects, and each person can kind of decide how they want to organize their own tasks in here. So for me, you can see like I have in progress, not started, started, done. And these are the tasks that are actually assigned to things that are in motion right now. So that's a little peek at my roadmap, but you can do yours any way you want.